Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Saturday, June 29th, 2024. And if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Saturday, Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Chicago White Sox. We're going to see Cal Quantrill and Jonathan Cannon as your starters. Cal Quantrill's another quality start in that last game against the Nationals and another Rockies victory. The Rockies are now 3-1 in his last 4 starts, and 2 of those wins were on the road. We know Colorado not known for being a great road team, but Quantrill in games against the Twins and Cardinals seems to have been pretty solid in the month of June. He earned W's and shutouts, 5 innings of shutout ball, 6 innings of shutout ball in those 2 games. I think he pitches well against a pretty weak White Sox lineup. Now, the question is, does he get the run support and does the bullpen help him out? But, I think the bullpens between these 2 teams pretty similar. I would say 2 of the bottom 3 bullpens in baseball this year. I actually like the matchup here for the Rockies against Cannon, who was pitching well, but we saw that last game did not pitch well against the Tigers of all teams. An inning of 7 hit, 8 total run baseball, 5 of those were earned. Definitely didn't get the defensive help, but nonetheless, 2 home runs given up in an 11-2 blowout loss. Not going to get the job done there. So for me, I got to go with the Rockies in this one on the money line. Next up, the New York Yankees taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Chris Bassett and Nestor Cortez are your starters. Obviously, a lot of people not too happy with the Yankees these days. Their recent performances. We know that they had a pretty embarrassing Subway Series performance. The first game of this series was ugly. And the bottom half of this lineup is really struggling. I mean, the 5 through 9 guys, in particular, guys like Aaron Judge are still doing what they do, but the bottom half is not really contributing, and that's why the Yankees' offense has struggled, but also the pitching staff has not been great. We saw Rodon get shelled, and Cortez has not been great on the road this season. Bassett's been pretty solid at Rogers Center, and, he's been solid in general recently, going his last 5 games of 3-run ball or fewer. And especially in the last 2 games, quality starts against the same lineup twice in the Red Sox. While the Blue Jays lost those games and they've lost his last 4, I still think Bassett's doing his part. And with the current form of the New York Yankees, I think there's value with the Blue Jays in this spot. So, it's not my favorite game on the board, but I'm going to lean towards the Blue Jays on the money line. Next up, we see another tough game for the Saturday card. I think overall this MLB card for Saturday is tricky, so I'll be treading lightly. But we got the St. Louis Cardinals and the Cincinnati Reds. We got Carson Spears and Sonny Gray as the starters. For me, I think Sonny Gray is the better option to start this game. I think the Cardinals have the better lineup and bullpen to go with it. I will lean towards St. Louis laying the run line, but Carson Spears, I think he is a solid starting pitching option. I just don't love the fact that, last 2 starts against Pittsburgh, while the last game was a quality start, still 7 base hits given up. He's given up a lot of base runners. The strikeout stuff is a bit inconsistent for my liking, and I do think in the end the Cardinals will win this game and cover that run line. Sonny Gray's pitched well this year. We know that, sub-3 ERA, pretty low whip at .95 is top 10 in baseball. He's pitched, last game 7 innings, 1 run against the Giants. Previous 7 2/3, 2 runs against the Marlins. He's pitching deep into games. He's efficient. He's still earning strikeouts, even though he's efficient. He's had 8 or more strikeouts in 3 of his last 5 starts. So he's in great form, and I got to go with St. Louis in the run line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Roddery Munoz and Aaron Nola are your starters. I mentioned how many home runs Roddery Munoz has given up so far in his season. He's near the top of the league in terms of home runs allowed. He's only had 35 2/3 innings of work. And, that goes to show you his home runs per 9, I think, is above 3.5 right now, which is unbelievable in my opinion. You don't see numbers like that too often, but he's given up 3 or more home runs in 3 of his last 5 starts. It's just tough to back him in this spot against the Phillies. A powerful lineup, a strong lineup against Aaron Nola, who's pitched well this year. The Marlins are 1-4 in Munoz's last 5 starts. I got to go with Aaron Nola and the Phillies in this one on the run line and potentially lay 2.5 runs as well. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. We got Justin Steele and Tobias Myers as your starters. Justin Steele may be 0-3, but he has pitched really well recently, and he's also pitched pretty well at Milwaukee in his career and against these Brewers in his career. I mean, we saw earlier this season 7 innings of shutout ball against Milwaukee with 8 strikeouts, and that was when Steele wasn't necessarily pitching well. I mean, going into that game, he had back-to-back starts against the Braves and Pirates where he got shelled. So, he has pitched well against Milwaukee. We look at the game logs last year. Obviously, when you're in the NL Central, these teams are going to play quite often. So Steele has faced this lineup quite a bit. back on August 29th of last year. A quality start, 6 innings of shutout ball with 8 strikeouts in a 1-0 Cubs victory. Back on July 5th, another quality start, 6 innings, 3 runs, and a 4-3 Cubs victory. So, he has pitched well. Another quality start at the beginning of the season last year. I think Steele pitches well here. Myers is also in good form, but you look at the expected numbers, that expected ERA is above 4. He does give up some sharp contact, strikeout numbers inconsistent. I'm going to go with the Cubs in the first 5 innings and the full game as well. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Kansas City Royals. Tanner Bybee and Cole Ragans are your starters. 2 great starting pitchers in this game. I'm going to lean towards the under. I mean, Tanner Bybee's pitched really well on the road this season. 44 innings, a 2.6 ERA compared to at home, an ERA of above 4.3. He's got a low points batting average on the road. The strikeout numbers are there. I think he pitches well. I mean, the Royals they were a tough lineup at the beginning of the season and for quite a while, but they've kind of struggled offensively, at least, putting together consistent efforts offensively. And I think Bybee can go 6-7 strong innings. And, Cole Ragans is also in excellent form. We're starting to see the dominant stuff that we expected going into the season. I mean, last game against the Marlins, now it's the Marlins, one of the weaker lineups in baseball, but still 6 innings of 1 run, 11 strikeout baseball is really impressive. And the Guardians, while they've been good against lefties this year, in the last 30 days, not so much. They're right around league average in terms of OPS and ISO. So I think Ragans pitches pretty well. I'm going to go with the under in Guardians Royals. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the New York Mets. Framber Valdez and Tyler McGill are your starters. I think there's no doubting that Framber Valdez is the better starting pitcher in this game, but I think the Mets have a solid matchup in this one because Tyler McGill's been better at home throughout his career so far this year as well. On the road this season, an ERA above 8. At home in 20 innings, it's a pretty small sample, but still a 2.61 ERA, 26 strikeouts, a much lower opponent's batting average, and no home runs given up. He's just been much, much better at Citi Field. So while he struggled in that last game against the Cubs, that was at Wrigley Field, and the wind was blowing out. He struggled, gave up 6 runs, and I think he bounces back, though, in this spot at home, even though it's still a pretty tough matchup against a hot Astros lineup. Framber Valdez on the other side has pitched really well recently. Looking at the last few games, 7 innings, a 1-run ball against the Orioles, 6 innings, a 2-run ball against Chicago. He's in great form. However, the New York Mets have been hitting lefties very well in the last 30 days. This is a team that really struggled against lefties at the beginning of the season, near the bottom of the league in OPS, WRC+, you name it. But in the last month, they're actually number 1 in baseball in team OPS against lefties, and it's a 338 plate appearance sample, so it's a decent sample size. A 932 OPS, 242 isolated power, very low strikeout rate at 18.9%. The Mets are crushing lefties, so for me, at this kind of price, I got to go with the Mets in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. We see Hogan Harris for Oakland, no official starter for Arizona. With no official starter for the Diamondbacks, I'm just going to isolate this game to the Diamondbacks matchup offensively against Hogan Harris, who has pitched well so far this year, but the expected numbers are not promising, and I do expect regression going forward. I like this matchup for Arizona offensively. Harris in the expected ERA above 5. The Diamondbacks have been pretty solid against lefties overall this season. I think Arizona gets on the board early and often, and that Oakland A's bullpen, we've mentioned, it was really strong at the beginning of the year, the very beginning. Mason Miller was, breaking records, it seemed, in terms of the closing pitching role. But now it's just not the same pen. They're giving up a lot more runs. Their expected numbers, they're right now ranked 18th in xFIP. They were in the top 10 for quite a while at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks team total over in this one. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Atlanta Braves. Paul Skeens and Max Fried are your starters. Great pitching matchup, potentially the best matchup on the board for the Saturday card. I mentioned Paul Skeens has been excellent. I think already he's one of the better pitchers in the National League. Just when you look at his strikeout stuff, 61 Ks in 46 and a third innings. He's only got a 2.14 ERA. He doesn't really walk a lot of guys, and sometimes we see young starting pitchers, especially, and guys that do miss a lot of bats. They sometimes give a lot of free passes up, but that hasn't been the case for Paul Skeens. So he's pitching really well. But Max Fried on the other side is also having a great season, and it's tough to go against Atlanta in this one because I think Fried can go toe-to-toe with Skeens. I mean, the Pirates have not been great offensively against lefties. In the last month, they ranked 26th in baseball in team OPS with a 26.1% strikeout rate, which is one of the highest in baseball, and a 5.4% walk rate, one of the lowest in baseball. So if Skeens and Fried do, go toe-to-toe, go 6 innings apiece of quality start ball, and it's a close game late, I trust this Braves lineup and bullpen a lot more in the late innings, especially at home. So I got to go with the Atlanta Braves in this one on the money line. Next up, the San Diego Padres taking on the Boston Red Sox. Michael King and Tanner Houck are your starters. And Michael King, I haven't liked what I've seen from him recently. We've mentioned he's been inconsistent this year, but in the last couple of starts, even the game against the Phillies where he pitched well, he gave up a lot of sharp contact, a lot of base hits. He was able to get out a lot of jams in that one, and he put the Padres in a position to win that game. They lost in the end, but that last game, obviously, he got crushed, and I don't love this spot for him against the Red Sox at Fenway Park. We know Boston's been pretty solid, surprisingly, offensively in 2024, and Tanner Houck's also in great form, 2.18 ERA on the season now. I got to go with the Red Sox in this one, the money line. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Jake Irvin and Aaron Savale are your starters. I like both starters in this matchup. I know Savale has struggled this year, but he's been a lot better at Tropicana Field. His expected numbers are solid, and I think it's a good matchup for him against Washington. Sometimes Savale's had issue, and not sometimes, throughout his career, he's had issues with the home run ball. We've mentioned he's usually good to give up a home run per game, but he's facing a Nationals team that I'm not necessarily worried about in terms of power. There's a solid lineup. They do a great job at limiting strikeouts. They do have some power hitters of course, in the lineup, but they're not necessarily one of the more powerful teams in baseball. So I think it's a good spot for Savale to bounce back. And Jake Irvin's pitched really well, 3.13 ERA. The expected numbers are sharp. He's, got good strikeout stuff. I think he pitches well, but for me, while I lean towards the under, I also think the Rays find a way to win this game. They've been able to find a way to win a lot of close games late recently. Their bullpen's been much sharper. They've been able to get to other teams' bullpens late in games like we saw in that Mariners series. So I'm going to go with the Rays in this one, the money line. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the San Francisco Giants. No official starter for San Francisco. We've seen that quite often with the Giants recently, which is a little bit, it's tough to handicap those games. But nonetheless, Tyler Glasnow going for the Dodgers. And Glasnow, we know, one of the better starters in the National League. He's had some rough starts here and there, but overall, sub-3 ERA, great strikeout stuff. I still think he remains a top-3 option in the National League in terms of starting pitching. And he's, at Oracle Park here. He pitched against the Giants earlier in the season in Dodger Stadium. He pitched pretty well, quality start. It wasn't his best outing, but still the Dodgers went on to win that game 5-4. I think Glasnow pitches well in this game also, and especially with this Giants strikeout rate, I do worry about that. They struck out quite a bit in that series against Chicago. I think, Glasnow, if you're looking at a player prop, maybe the strikeout prop over is something to look at there. But San Francisco, we've mentioned the bullpen. I've said it many times. I'm not giving up on this Giants bullpen. The expected numbers, the xFIP, one of the best in baseball. So the ERA is starting to shrink, and I think we see the Giants pitching staff at least, put together a competitive effort in this one. I think the Dodgers do end up winning this game, but I'm going to go with the under in this one between LA and San Francisco. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Michael Lorenzen and Kate Povich are your starters. The Rangers have been solid against lefties in the last 30 days. Now, they were helped out quite a bit by Dallas Keuchel in that one game against Milwaukee where they got to him early and often in that one. But I still think they can get to Povich for a few runs here. Povich has pitched pretty well recently after a tough Major League debut against the Blue Jays. He's given up 3 runs or fewer in the last 3 games against some pretty tough lineups, the Braves, the Yankees, and the Guardians. But I still think the Rangers can get to him, especially at Camden Yards, for a few runs. And Michael Lorenzen, I don't trust him in this spot. Similar to I didn't trust John Gray in that first game of this series. Lorenzen's got an expected ERA at around 4.5, and the Orioles have been the number 1 lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching in pretty much all season, but in the last 30 days. And I got to go with the Orioles and the Rangers over the total in this one. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Reese Olson and Griffin Canning are your starters. I just can't trust this Tigers lineup right now. We'll see what happens Friday night, but this team has just struggled offensively overall in 2024. The same issues we've seen the last few years from this team. The pitching staff's been decent. Guys like Reese Olson, who's bounced back after a couple of tough starts against the Nationals, Brewers, and Red Sox. He's bounced back in the last couple of games, but we saw Davis Daniel, the number 28 prospect in one of the worst farm systems in baseball, go 8 innings of 8 strikeouts, shutout ball in his Major League debut against these Tigers. Griffin Canning may not be my favorite option, but any option is a decent one right now against this Tigers lineup, in my opinion. So while I don't love the Angels bullpen, their lineup themselves has actually shown a pulse recently. They had a nice series against the A's, so I'm going to go with the Angels in this one on the money line. And the final game we're talking about for the Saturday card in Major League Baseball, the Minnesota Twins and the Seattle Mariners. Pablo Lopez and Bryce Miller are your starters. I think Pablo Lopez is starting to find his game. We saw that last start. I know it was against the Oakland A's, who have been one of the weaker lineups in baseball recently, but 8 innings of 14 strikeout baseball is exactly what we're expecting. Even more than what we're expecting from Pablo Lopez. His expected numbers continue to be sharp, and even though he has struggled here and there, overall this year, I mean, the Twins are still 4-1 in his last 5 games. It goes to show you the bullpen has his back, and the lineup certainly has had his back, especially recently. And this Twins lineup has been really solid. I mean, you got guys like Royce Lewis going into Friday's game. If he played a 162-game schedule, he would average, he's on pace for 77 home runs. He's hit 10 of them in 21 games so far. I mean, guys like Willie Castro and Juan Miranda start to heat up, and, veterans like Byron Buxton, Carlos Correa, Carlos Santana, OPS is in the 700 plus. So for me, I mean, this Twins lineup is tough to face. I know Bryce Miller has pitched well, especially at T-Mobile Park, but I think if Lopez and Miller can go toe-to-toe, cancel each other out through the first few innings, I trust this Twins lineup in a late game, in a close game late. So I'm going to go with the Minnesota Twins on the money line in this one. And that's it. Those are the games for Saturday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.